Because in American politics, a lot of arguments happen over things that most voters have never even heard of. One of those things is called the filibuster. It sounds like a strange word. Many people picture a senator standing on the Senate floor talking for hours and hours, refusing to sit down. And that image isn't entirely wrong. But today, the filibuster is less about dramatic speeches and really more about power. The debate over the filibuster has become one of the most important arguments in DC today. Some politicians want to get rid of it. Others say doing it would be a huge mistake. The real question is simple. Is removing the filibuster a smart move if you're thinking about the future? Now, to understand the answer, we have to first understand what the filibuster is, how it works, and why it exists. The filibuster is a rule. It's not in the Constitution. It's just a rule that's used in the United States Senate. It allows senators to delay or block a vote on a bill by continuing the debate. They just keep it going, blah, 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 blah. So in simple terms, it means a group of senators can prevent a bill from moving forward unless enough votes exist to stop the delay. And that number has changed over time. Today, it's 60 votes. The Senate has 100 members. That means a bill usually needs more than just a simple majority. It needs a large majority. Some people will call it a supermajority to move forward. The process is called cloture. And you've heard that word before too. When 60 senators vote for cloture, the debate ends. It's for those of us who have experienced Robert's Rule of Order. It's it's when you call the question. I call a question. Someone says I second it, and then you vote on that, and then you get closure, and then you get cloture, right? So without those 60 votes, the bill often stops right there. And the reason is if it needs 60 votes to pass, and you can't get 60 votes to stop the debate, there's a really good chance that it's not going to pass. So the filibuster creates what many people call a 60 vote barrier. Again, you might wonder why the Senate works differently than the House. There's a real reason for that. So to understand why the filibuster exists, we need to understand the difference between the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House works on a simple majority rule. If a party or a bill has 218 votes, it can usually pass whatever. It'll pass. And if a party has 218 votes, they can usually pass whatever legislation they want to. Now, the Senate was designed to move much slower. The founders wanted the Senate to act as a sort of a cooling chamber. The idea was that the House may act quickly. The Senate would slow things down and force some deeper debates. Each state also gets equal representation in the Senate. Wyoming gets 2 senators. California gets 2 senators. New York gets 2 senators. Florida gets 2 senators. Rhode Island gets 2 senators. Yes, the smallest state in the Union gets 2 senators. Alaska gets 2 senators. You got me? So each state gets equal representation in the Senate. That means senators represent the entire state, not just their district. Because of this structure, the Senate has always been a place where rules matter more. How you do things matter more. Over time, the filibuster has become one of those rules. In earlier decades, the filibuster required real effort. It used to be a thing, which is why it wasn't done very often, because it was hard. If a senator wanted to block a bill, he had to stand on the floor and talk. And as long as he kept talking, a vote couldn't happen. You had to keep talking. You had to keep talking, whether you stood there and you wet yourself or you crapped yourself or or whatever happened, you had to stay there on the floor. And one of the most famous examples happened in 1957, 3 years before your host was born. Senator Strom Thurmond, this is super important. Democrat Senator Strom Thurmond spoke for more than 24 hours trying to block a civil rights bill. He read the Declaration of Independence. He read state voting laws. He even read recipes. Eventually, he had to stop, and the bill passed anyway. And some of these dramatic speeches became part of Senate history. You know, I've heard recently somebody was reading The Cat in the Hat, but the modern filibuster works a bit differently. Today, senators don't usually stand and talk; they simply signal that they just say, "We're going to filibuster this bill," and leadership knows the bill cannot move forward without 60 votes. And if you don't have 60 votes for cloture, that pretty much is going to kill whatever bill it is. Now, there are folks who want to remove the filibuster. Supporters of eliminating the filibuster argue that it blocks democracy. Their argument is very simple. If a party wins elections and gains control of the Congress, they should be able to pass the laws that they promised voters. But the filibuster means a minority party can stop legislation when it has fewer votes, or far fewer votes. Critics say that this gives the minority too much power. They also point out that the filibuster is not mentioned in the Constitution. It is not. It developed later through Senate rules. And over the past few decades, the filibuster has been used more often than ever before. And because of that, many people believe that the Senate has become stuck, unable to pass major laws. To them, removing the filibuster would allow government to actually function again. Okay, now before you get all crazy, I'm going to talk about the other side too. So don't get all mad at me just yet. We're going to have an adult conversation about this. Now, opponents of eliminating the filibuster believe that it protects the country from wild political swings. Their concern is not about today. Their concern is about what happens when power changes hands, because it does. And American politics changes very quickly, and especially in, compared to a lot of places around the planet. A party that controls DC today might lose control in the next election. Because, for instance, right now, Republicans control the Senate and the House of Representatives and the White House. In November, that could change entirely. So by January 21st, the Republicans may lose the Senate and they may lose the House, and the balance of power shifts immediately. Right? All right. So if the filibuster disappears, a party that controls the Senate, House, Senate, and the White House could pass massive changes with only 51 votes. Mob rules. Then, when the other party gains power, they could reverse those laws just as quickly. They could create what some experts call policy whiplash. It means you go one direction and then suddenly you go back the other direction. And this is what policy whiplash looks like. Imagine the filibuster disappears tonight. A party gains control of DC and passes major laws, major legislation. They change the tax rates. They change immigration laws. They change healthcare rules. They might change energy policy. And all of that happens with 51 votes. The tyranny of the majority, as some would say. Now imagine the next election flips power to the other party. They can reverse everything. Taxes go one direction, and then they swing in the other direction. Immigration laws tighten, and then suddenly they loosen. Healthcare changes again. Business, workers, and state governments face constant uncertainty. Rules could change every few years. every 2 years, really, if you think about it. Now, before y'all get at me, I know that Senate terms are 6 years. I know. But they split that up. They have a third, and then a third, and a third every 2 years. So every 2 years, you could have this swing one direction and swing back another direction and swing this direction pretty much every 2 years because the House could flip as well. Do you see the kind of uncertainty, how that might happen, right? So this kind of instability could be damaging for an economy because what businesses hate more than anything is uncertainty. When companies decide where to invest money, where to build factories, all that stuff, they look for predictability. If tax policy changes every 4 years or every 2 years, planning becomes much more difficult. If energy regulations swing back and forth, drill baby drill, no drill leases, drill baby drill, no oil leases, it's hard for companies to companies will hesitate to invest billions of dollars in infrastructure. When laws become unstable, investment will slow down. They will protect themselves. And that affects jobs, wages, and economic growth. The filibuster forces broader agreement before large policy changes happen. Because of that, laws tend to last longer. That stability, excuse me, really matters. Now, you might have heard, and you might be hearing a lot now about something called a nuclear option. And the Senate has already seen what happens when rule changes. Back in 2013, Senate Democrats removed the filibuster for lower federal court nominations. They argued that Republicans were blocking too many judicial appointments. They weren't getting their judges through. So they said, forget the filibuster. 51 votes, our judge gets confirmed, we move on with life. Now, the Republicans warned that the rule change would eventually expand. Give them an inch to take a mile, right? That's exactly what happened. So 4 years later, in 2017, Republicans removed the filibuster for Supreme Court nominations in order to confirm Justice Neil Gorsuch. And the Democrats screamed bloody murder. Forget that 4 years previous to that, they pretty much did the same thing, but it doesn't matter. Later, the same rule allowed confirmation of other justices with simple majority votes. Yeah. What started as a limited rule change quickly expanded because it often does. And that's why many senators are careful about altering Senate traditions. Once a rule changes, it rarely goes back. And this is something that I'm starting to talk about here on this platform a lot, the long game. The real issue with the filibuster for me is long-term thinking. Short-term thinking focuses on what helps your party right now, tonight. Long-term thinking asks, what happens when your party loses power? Every political party believes its ideas are best for the country. But control of government shifts over time. A rule that benefits your side today could hurt your side tomorrow. That's why some political analysts say removing the filibuster is like removing guardrails from a mountain road. You might move faster for a while, but the risk of crashing becomes much higher. We talk a lot. We talk about they don't do anything there. They go so slow. They get paid this money, and they never do anything. Well, it was designed that way. Something that I don't know that kids maybe don't learn in school anymore. It was designed that way. The American system of government includes many checks. The House of Representatives changes quickly. Elections happen every 2 years. There's supposed to be constant rollover. People aren't supposed to be there for 40 and 50 years. That's not what's supposed to happen. Constant rollover. House of Representatives change. The Senate moves slower. The Senate terms, they have 6-year terms, and they only move a third at a time. And people aren't supposed to stay there. Like John Cornyn, he's not supposed to stay there for, he's running for his 5th term. So if he lives to the end of his 5th term, he will have been in the Senate 30 years. And that's too long. But that's another video, isn't it? Presidents, of course, again, the president must also approve the legislation. The Senate can vote for it and the House can vote for it, and the president can go, no. This is why I want to back up some for my people who've been here a while. All these calls, after the Affordable Care Act was passed, for them to repeal the act. I'm just going to say it out loud. Were performative and stupid, because Barack Obama was never going to repeal his signature piece of legislation. That was performative and stupid. It was never going to happen. And all these people getting elected on a pledge that they would repeal Obamacare. If you vote for me, I will repeal this onus Obamacare and just take over the healthcare industry. Okay. While Obama's still president, he's going to get the legislation and go, that was wrong. I'm sorry. Yeah. And you don't have enough votes for an override. Did some of these people actually go to 8th grade? Did they just skip 8th grade and go out behind the gym and smoke pot? What were you doing? Anyway, I digress. But all these steps, including courts popping in, can create a system where major changes require broad agreement. Now, the filibuster has become part of that system over time. It's not in the Constitution, but it reinforces the idea that major laws should require strong support, and they should require strong debate, which simply takes more time. Now, supporters of removing the filibuster say that it's already broken. It's already tore up. They say the rule has changed way too much already. They argue the modern version does not encourage debate anymore. Instead, it simply allows senators to quietly block legislation without any effort. In the past, filibusters were very rare because, like I said at the beginning, they were hard, because that meant that somebody had to stand up there for hours and hours and maybe a day or so, wetting themselves, literally, because no, you don't get you don't get to go to the bathroom. If you leave the podium, then your time is over and the vote happens. So you got to stay there the whole time. Hope your voice stays strong. Hope your constitution is strong. Yeah, you're hungry and you just wet yourself and you maybe even pooped yourself. Yeah. So they were rare. Today they're extremely common. Some critics say that the Senate now requires 60 votes for almost everything, even when the debate is minimal. Because of this, they argue the rule is no longer serving its original purpose. Instead of encouraging compromise, it simply prevents action. Write down in the comments what you think. Some lawmakers have suggested some middle ground solutions. Compromise. So instead of eliminating the filibuster completely, the Senate could reform it. For example, one idea would to restore the talking filibuster. If senators want to block a bill, they will need to stand and speak continuously. We need to go back to how they used to do it. Once they stop speaking, the vote would happen. Another idea would gradually lower the number of votes needed for cloture. For example, the Senate might require 60 votes the first day of the filibuster, but only 57 votes for the second day, or 54 votes on the third day, and then 51 votes after an extended debate. These type of reforms attempt to balance minority rights with majority rule. But of course, agreement on any of these changes has been damn near impossible. Well, what would that look like? So let's say you have the SAVE Act, which is the crux of all this conversation about the filibuster now. Let's say you decide to, okay, we're going to open debate, and debate's going to be for, I don't know, 96 hours of debate. How many hours? Is that like 4 days, something like that, 4 or 5 days? And you go, okay. So Monday, in order to stop debate, you need 60 votes. Tuesday, in order to stop debate, you need 57 votes. Wednesday, 54 to 54. And Thursday, and if it continues on to Friday or Saturday or Sunday, you only need 51. So as debate continues, it gets easier and easier to stop it. I don't know. Maybe it's a thing. Maybe it's a thing. Maybe it's something that we should consider. I have people who are my friends in this and have been my friends for a long time who are like, get rid of it. If the Republicans had, had, had a I don't know, a sweet pea in their sack, they get rid of it. Now, if the filibuster disappeared, entirely, the Senate would then operate much more like the House of Representatives. Major laws get passed with 51 votes, and they would likely produce faster legislation, but would also produce faster reversals. Each new government might undo what the previous government passed. And so, you know what we have? We'd have the same thing we have now. It would just take a little longer to do. We'd go this direction, and then we go back to this direction, and this direction, and go back the other direction. So basically, nothing would happen. And maybe that's a good thing because I'm always like, always look at the person who's running for Congress with a side eye and they go, "We're going to get things done." So the only thing you should be getting done is you should be making sure that my personal freedoms are taken care of. All I want you to do. But this thing over time going back and forth could really weaken the public trust. It might, feel it might feel that laws are temporary and unstable. It might even turn into the opposite of what people are trying to get away from. It might actually make the system more partisan and more aggressively partisan than it is now, if that's even possible. So here's part of the reality here. Despite the debate, removing the filibuster has not been easy. Even when one party controls the Senate, many senators hesitate to eliminate it. Why? No, because senators understand that control eventually flips. Very few politicians expect their party to dominate forever. Protecting the filibuster may protect them for now, um, and it may protect them when they're in the minority later. Removing the filibuster to pass the SAVE Act is expedient for now. As a matter of fact, all this debate now has been shushed up again because Ken Paxton, who was the former Secretary of State or Attorney General, sorry, of the state of Texas, who was running for the same seat that John Cornyn now holds, has announced a couple of days ago that he would pull out of, they're in a runoff, that he would pull out of the race. Basically, he would let John Cornyn win the Republican nomination for Senate, and John Cornyn would beat Tallarico easy. He would have beaten Jasmine Crockett too, so it doesn't matter. And basically say, I'll give that to you. I'll give that to John Cornyn if the Senate removes the 60 vote barrier, which means get rid of the filibuster. And of course, the proponents of removing the filibuster are saying, yeah, that'll show if these Republicans have any stones. For now, But here's some things that we should learn, or that we should have learned. Because history shows that major changes in the Senate rules often produce what I call UCs, unintended consequences. The nuclear option on nominations, for example, what begins as a narrow rule change can quickly become a broader precedent. Once the Senate weakens one part of the filibuster, pressure grows to weaken the rest. And this is why many observers believe the Senate is slowly moving towards majority rule, even if the filibuster technically remains. It's turning into the House. And then it becomes more partisan than ever. Now, if that's what you want, that's how you do it. All right. Now, at its heart, the filibuster debate is about one question: should the majority rule, or should the minority have protection? There really isn't a simple answer. Majority rule allows government to act. And when you hear that, let me say that again. Majority rules allows government to act. Some of us heard that and we went, yes, and others heard that phrase and went, right? Minority protection prevents sudden swings in policy. The challenge is balancing both ideas. And the filibuster has been one of the ways that the Senate attempts to do that. Now, the argument over the filibuster will not end. I don't believe it'll end anytime soon. I don't believe that they'll get rid of the 60-seat barrier or end the filibuster so John Cornyn can get back into the Senate. God, at least I hope not. I hope that's not the reason. Because whenever one party feels blocked, pressure grows to remove the rule. Now, it's just a rule. I want to keep saying that. It's not a law. Because people who are new to all this sort of believe it's a law. It's not a law. It's just a rule. It's a rule they came up with that they could change or get rid of. So whenever that same party fears losing power, the rule suddenly looks valuable again. That tension is built into the system. The Senate was never, let me help you. The Senate was never designed to move quickly. It was designed to force patience. All right. Some final thoughts. The filibuster is not a perfect rule. It's made by man. Nothing made by man is perfect or going to be perfect. It can slow legislation because it was designed to do just that. It may frustrate majorities. Yes. Okay. So you're frustrated. So you have to sit on the Senate floor for 96 hours while somebody blathers some BS, read some pie recipes they found at their grandma's house, read some Dr. Seuss books to you. Whatever. If you've got to 60 votes, if you think there should be a vote on it, wait them out. Put on your Depends, sit in the chamber. If you got to pee yourself with your Depends. Whatever. Wait them out. Because it also creates stability. Removing it might make it easier to pass laws today, yet the long-term consequences could be far more dramatic. Policies may swing wildly. Businesses could face uncertainty. Political conflict could intensify and will intensify, let's be honest. In the end, the filibuster debate is not just about a procedure. It's about how the country wants its government to work. Is it fast and flexible, or slow and stable? That choice will shape American politics for years to come. My name is Willie Lawson. This is the Morning Report. Morning Report, again, is a production of fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com. Until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye bye now.